P.U.N.K Spright has to be one of the most unique, heavily sort of combo-based strategies that I've had the pleasure of playing in a long time. This deck is incredible. It was recommended to me by somebody in our Discord who showed me videos from another YouTuber called HexLex. Massive respect to the guy. He's an absolute genius for putting this one together. This deck is nuts. So I was watching his videos and going over it. Had a blast playing the deck myself. Honestly, if you already know how to play Spright and you already know how to play P.U.N.K, it's really not that much of a jump to learn how to play this. Although there's a lot of nuances and instances and things that I do want to talk about that surprisingly HexLex doesn't actually talk about in his video. His deck list is better than even he talked about, which is amazing. He did a really bang up job making this. Full credit to the guy. Absolute blast. I believe we made slight alterations, although I can't remember specifically what the original list was, but full credit to the guy. It was an absolute blast. So we're going to go over some games. I've got about 4 replays lined up to talk about some of the main plays. We're going to be doing a card-for-card deck profile at the end of the video, and we're going to be talking about some of the combos and the way in which the deck works in most sort of situations so that you know why we're playing it the way we're playing it, because it's a very unique strategy. You know, most of the time you look at Spright and you're thinking, okay, well, Spright will level 2 lock you. How does that work with a deck that wants to spam out level 8s, level 11s, right? But it does, trust me. We're going to talk about that at the end. We got some gameplay lined up so we can actually get to grips with how the deck works. So if you're interested in this style of content or anything else that we do here, be it tournament coverage, be it live streams, be it whatever, make sure you subscribe to catch it as it's coming out. Like the video if you enjoy playing P.U.N.K or Spright, or if you have any questions, anything like that, of course the comment section is below. Or we've got a Discord if you want to hop into the Discord and ask us directly there. Lots of discussion happening there all the time about a bunch of different decks, and the guys there were actually the ones who put me on to this deck to begin with, so I've no doubt you'll learn something useful if you hop in there. But without any further ado, let's get into the gameplay. Alright, so right before we dive into replay number 1, I want to briefly talk about what the actual glue of the deck is, and this is something that HexLex makes a very good point of talking about. It is Assault Synchron. This is the thing that joins the two things in perfect harmony, and this is what makes the deck actually work, and you're going to see why it makes the deck work here. So we're going to start off, we're going to special summon Assault Synchron as one normally would. They're going to go for Max C. Of course, luckily we had the call by. In this particular replay, I was actually playing Duel as well. I was playing like 8 or 9 cards to stop Max C because I was so tired of seeing Max C. I since took it out. It was like a rage pick, but you need to have a lot of answers to Max C because that thing is an absolute menace. Luckily in this replay we did, so we're going to get rid of Max C. We're going to summon out the Assault Synchron. We're going to follow that up with Jet Blue. Jet Blue gets searching, except it gets negated. So ideally you would have liked to grab Jet there, and that would have extended your combo significantly. However, we still have all the gas we need. We're going to Synchro Summon into Cupid Pitch. This card is what makes the whole deck work, and this can only come out because of Assault Synchron. That's why Assault Synchron is the glue. And why does this work? Well, on summon it's going to change itself to level 2 or to level 6, and then what you're going to need is any extender in hand. In this case we have a Bestial monster. If this was a Spright monster it would still work. Any Bestial also works. Any monster that you can summon, because this will either change to a level 6 if you have a level 2 extender, or a level 2 if you have a level 6 extender. And what you're going to do with these two cards is you're going to, of course, get Searching with Magnamut, then you're going to Synchro Summon into the Chaos Ruler. That's going to trigger Cupid Pitch's effect as well as the Chaos Ruler's effect. Chaos Ruler, of course, check the top 5 cards of the deck for a light or dark. If you see one, add it to your hand. There's the Duel I mentioned. We have since taken that out, but yeah, that is a good card you can play. Another Assault Synchron, that's whatever. But Cupid Pitch searches the deck for Xiamen. That is such a huge interaction that I don't know if I maybe missed it in the videos, but I don't remember him actually talking about that particular interaction. So if you can get into the Chaos Ruler without using your normal summon, which is easy, right? You're playing Assault Synchron, you're playing Spright, you're playing Bestials. You can search your deck for Xiamen, and you still have your normal summon to use Xiamen, on Xiamen to summon it out to search your Foxy Tune, and from here it just gets nutty, right? We're going to drop it, we're going to drop the Assault Synchron, summon Deer Note, we're going to Synchro Summon into the Axel, Synchro Stardust Dragon. Because we've already got Chaos Ruler, we can just go into this guy instead. And this will bring back a level 2 tuner from the graveyard, specifically of course our Assault Synchron, while our Deer Note is going to revive back from the grave our Foxy Tune. Now this could also have been Xiamen. It is either or. If you wanted to go down the Chaos Ruler route, Xiamen's a good pick. I personally don't like Chaos Ruler frame 1. I usually go for a rank 8 Exceed instead. We're going to go Spright Elf, bring back Assault Synchron. Chaos Ruler, going to banish 2, going to summon itself out. You have a few options for what you could do here. Another option, what we could have done is we could have used Assault Synchron and one of our level 8s to go into Sprint. Sprint send Shinobi Necro, so we could banish the Shinobi Necro for the Chaos Ruler to summon it as well. But that was a lot of extension and a lot of resources for something that ultimately wasn't going to be very much better, because we would have not had enough level 8 extenders to go into a rank 8 as well. So we decided just to keep it nice and simple here. We go into Baron de Fleur, Assault Synchron, going to banish itself, bring back the Chaos Ruler. We're going to use the Chaos Ruler, sorry, we're going to use Foxy Toon and the Stardust Dragon to go into Hope Harbinger, and we're going to pass there. So we've got an Omni Negate, we've got a Spell Negate, we have Attack Redirection, we have an On-Demand Banish, we have a Bestial, all of that being played through 2 hand traps as well. So like, this is not as if we were just playing the game, right? We were interrupted. If we were able to use our Jet to our Blue to search for Jet, it would have been significantly stronger. So just look at it that way. Now we're actually playing in the Amir match, which I thought was really cool. That's why I wanted to start with this one. Our opponent goes for Xiamen. We're going to use our Assault Synchron. They're actually going to hit the Assault Synchron with Call by the Grave, so we're going to use Hope Harbinger. We're actually going to suck up that Call by, because he's only got 2 cards left in hand. P.U.N.K don't play a ton of like super crucial spell cards other than the field spell, and our plan is to prevent the field spell from even happening. So they're going to go for E-Telly. We're going to use Baron. We're going to negate the E-Telly because we're very confident that we can shut this guy down, so we are. He's going to use the Almond's effect. That's totally fine. They're going to grab the Foxy Toon. Foxy Toon, I imagine, yep, going to activate here, dropping itself, dropping the last card in hand, summoning out the Sharkusai, and this is when we hit him with the Smashers, banishing Starter, banishing the Sharkusai. What do you do? GG's, game over. All of his cards gone, all of his cards used up. Perfect. And that's the power of this deck. It is honestly incredible. Let's get into game 2. Already getting into game 2 here. A bit more of a pretty standard starting hand with a lot of level 2 extenders in this hand. Seeing the Deer Note in hand isn't the greatest feeling in the world, but you know, we'll live, it's fine. Let's see what we can get done here. We're playing against Dogmatika. This was a pretty interesting matchup. Dogmatika is rough because you really use a lot of your extra deck, so this is usually... Again, Dogmatika is not super strong, that's the thing, so yeah, its playstyle is super annoying. It's gonna really reduce the amount of options you have access to in the long run. However, it's not like super difficult to get over, so that's fine. But our opponent has just opened up the freaking nuts here. They're gonna go Albazoa here, and they got everything, right? Albazoa is gonna activate, they're gonna pitch 7 cards. We decided to send 6 from the extra deck and 1 from the hand. We have no use for a second Calico Clawcrow, and like I said, we really want to keep as much of our extra deck as we can. So they're going to set 2, they're going to pass, that's fine. We're just going to have to see what happens here. We're going to top deck in the Call by the Grave. We're going to normal summon the Calico Clawcrow, not typically something you want to do. However, our plays were between A, normal summoning Xiamen and getting blown up right away, or B, starting with the Calico Clawcrow to go down the Spright pathway to hopefully make something happen out of this. Now, they're going to go for Maxi. Again, luckily, we had the Call by the Grave. We play a lot of answers to Maxi, so it's not uncommon that we have one. So we can banish that, get rid of it. Again, between that, cross out Ash, all of these cards, we almost always have an answer to Maxi. Grab Jet. We're going to summon Jet. Jet gets Searching. We're going to grab Smashers. So this is the play here. We really needed to get Smashers because we don't really have another way of outing the Albazoa. Albazoa is a bit of a problem. So we needed Smashers. We're going to go Elf here. The Deer Note that we summoned, Deer Note now is going to bring back the Xiamen from the graveyard. That was our sort of plan. We knew that if we went for the Deer Note, sending it to the graveyard, by of course summoning it, sending Xiamen to the graveyard, when it goes to the grave, you get to revive the Xiamen, and we can use Xiamen to start searching, and we can make some serious plays out of that. They are going to go for, what was that, the White Knight, pitching another card to grave. We send Psychic and Punisher because, again, I don't believe we're going to need it on this particular duel. We're going to summon out the Foxy Toon here. Foxy Toon going to get boosted up by the Xiamen. Then we're going to bring back Calico Clawcrow. We're going to use these 2 here to go into Gigantic Spright. So we needed the Foxy Toon in order to get over the White Relic here. Now we're going to go Battle Phase, activating the Smashers. We're going to banish Sprint that we sent there from the extra deck. We're going to banish the Albazoa. Getting over the White Knight, we're going to swing in for some serious damage here, as well as gaining 500 life points back. 14,000. So our opponent's down to half their life points. We're there 4k. We still got some Spell Trap Negate on board. They're going to go for Ultimate Slayer, forcing us to get rid of Spright Elf. That was a hell of a top deck right there, I'm going to be honest with you. That was pretty damn awesome. They send the Evil Twins Trouble Sunny, which they now banish to send Evil Twins to the graveyard to get rid of our Gigantic Spright as well. That was one hell of a play from our opponent, so absolutely love that. We're going to go starter here, Spright starter. There you go. Our opponent did not want the sauce. He did not want the smoke. Yeah, again, a rough one for sure. Our opponent decimating our extra deck there really hurt, and we needed to play in a very funky fashion in order to get past his particular set of protections and interruptions. The reason I wanted to show this game off in particular is because it shows the versatility of the deck. We were presented with a 4K unremovable wall through standard sort of effects that P.U.N.K or Spright would otherwise have used. You can't use your regular means to get rid of it, so we had to think outside the box. We had to adapt our plays, and we were able to, thankfully, due to smashers, and we were able to get past the board, which is pretty damn impressive. So yeah, really well played. Our opponent played fantastically as well. Really good use of the Dogmatica cards. They definitely gave us a little bit of trouble, but unfortunately for them, we just had too many options. Let's get into game 3. Now, boy, going up into this match here, we're going to be playing against Tearlaments. We're starting with a Maxi of our own here. First time we had Maxi in our opening hand of this video. So, luckily for us, they don't have it out to it, which is great. I mean, again, it sucks to suck. What do you want me to say? They're going to pitch Merly. We're going to banish Merly off the Drissworm. We do play quite a number of Bestials because I'm really sick of seeing Tearlament. But they've actually got Polymerization. They need to say they want to go balls deep. They want all the smoke. They're going to go for Chimera here. They're going to pop our Drissworm to draw too. They think that's worth the draw. And you know what? Again, they get a significant amount of card advantage out of this. Significantly more so than what we would get. So they're going to draw 2, pop 1. Drissworm, of course, gets rid of the Rhino Heart because their Chimera is untargetable. Then they simply pass turn. So they allowed us to draw a couple of cards, but, you know, I get it. They wanted to at least put something up here, so they got that untargetable 3k beat stick. We're going to go tuning here, and this hand is just, this is GG's, game over. We go with Assault Synchron, special summon the Jet. Jet gets searching for starter. We're going to use these 2 now and a Synchro Summon for Cupid Pitch. Like I said, this is the glue that holds it all together, Cupid Pitch. Then what we do this time is we go into Spright Elf here. Elf then's going to bring back the Jet. Mudora is going to get Shuffling. Now, we played this one slightly differently, and you're going to see why. Mudora is going to get rid of our cards here, unfortunately. That's totally fine. We're going to go Spright Elf. We're going to go Starter here. He's going to hit the Cupid Pitch with a Bestial for some reason, but that is totally fine. I have no issues with that. Starter going to bring out Blue. This was one of the earlier replays as well. We were still kind of getting the grips of the deck. It probably would have been slightly better if we went down the Synchro path, but in this occasion in particular, I really wanted a way to put Avramax on board, guaranteed. So that's why we did the plays in the way we did them. Again, perhaps not optimal, but maybe we should have gone down the Synchro pathway 100%. This was one of our first games sort of trying to learn the deck a little bit, so there was definitely room for improvement, I would say. But again, I just wanted to show off a different route of play that the deck can take, right? That's the whole point of this. You've already seen the Synchro route. You've already seen it. I already showed it to you. I want to show you something different. They're going to go for Dark in the Mask Arena here. They're going to try and steal our Mask Arena. Absolutely not good, sir. We're going to negate that with an Imperm. They're going to link into Sprint. Sprint, very interesting. They're going to go Sprint, Sand, I would imagine the Angler. We're going to hit him with that Ash Blossom because it's the last card he has at his disposal. He can't really do anything past that point. We really wanted Avramax because, again, with that Chimera being huge and untargetable, the main way in which we're going to be able to get over it would, of course, be through Avramax. We have to basically take it out by battle, or we could commit to a Smashers, sacrificing the starter play. Smashers would also been able to get rid of it, which is totally fine as well. We had a lot of different paths and routes we could have taken. I just wanted to mix it up a little bit, showing off some of the sort of more Spright heavy, Link heavy combo paths as well. There you go. Don't forget Cupid Pitch. Changing itself to a level 2 means that it's now valid on the field as a sort of spawn point for your sprites, and for lack of a better description. So that is something to bear in mind as well. Let's get into our 4th and final game. Alrighty. So, game 4. This is, like I said, a pretty broken hand. I believe this actually might have been our very first game playing the deck. We're going to go into Cupid Pitch here. Cupid Pitch will reduce itself down to level 2. Pretty standard stuff. We're going to summon out the Drissworm. We're going to use these 2 in a Synchro Summon for the Chaos Ruler. Chaos Ruler then, of course, and Cupid Pitch are both going to activate. Chaos Ruler is going to check the top 5 of the deck. It's going to hit with an Ash Blossom. Very interesting. We're actually gonna hit this with a Crossout Designator. Now, you could make the argument where that's not totally necessary, and we could have just let that resolve because the Chaos Ruler Search is nice, but it's definitely not mandatory. So arguably we could have left that. Ultimately, with the Designator though, I didn't want to just not be able to use it. He obviously hasn't used Max C so far, so like what else am I going to use it on? So negating the Ash Blossom is as good a use as any. We're going to normal summon the Xiamen. Xiamen grab us the Foxy-Tune. We're going to use Foxy-Tune here, dropping the starter. I know some people are probably thinking, why didn't I drop the blue instead? But with starter, I'm probably just going to summon blue. And I don't want to get too locked for no reason. It doesn't make any sense. So we kept the blue in hand. We're going to go into Axel. Axel brings back the Assault Synchron. Deer Note brings back the Foxy-Tune. Pretty standard plays. Again, if you're going second, most of the time your Deer Note will bring back as the Yaman instead of a Foxy-Tune because you want to go into like the Psychic M Punisher. But going first, I like having level 8 so I can go into some rank 8 plays. And our opponent literally just didn't even want to stick around, right? That's just the power of the deck. They just do not want the smoke. We would have brought back Assault Synchron, special the Jet, special the Blues, search for Jet, special the Jet, search for Smashers, and we would have gone absolutely nuts. But our opponent just didn't want to smoke, and that's what happened in a lot of games. It was difficult for me to get really good replays because as soon as they saw the deck you were playing, they were like, "Nah, I'm out, Chief. I'm good. I'm donezo." So it was not an uncommon occurrence where you would play a couple of cards and your opponent would just surrender. Right? They did not want the smoke. Anyways, let's get into the deck profile because this is going to be a long one. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a long one. Alright, so what we're going to do, before I start going over the cards one by one, I do want to, again, first of all, briefly remind people, if you got this far and you haven't subscribed or liked the video, please do that. Every little bit of support helps. But secondly, we're going to briefly recap some of the gameplay in terms of how the deck actually works so that you have these cards in a sort of context where when you hear what they do, it makes sense within the context and game plan of the deck. So it is essentially a deck. It is segmented into two halves, but there's a bridge. What are the two halves? Of course, P.U.N.K and Spright. The deck is fully capable of utilizing both individual engines in order to set up a bunch of plays and negates, even just by themselves, right? So you have two entirely powerful and independent deck types within your deck. So if you ever break or get interrupted or whatever, and you're not able to go into your P.U.N.K plays, you still have Spright. If you get interrupted in your Spright plays, well, you still got P.U.N.K, right? And that's some of the beauty of it because they both operate pretty independently. The only real hitch between them is that sometimes Spright will 2-lock you once you've used something like your starter or your gigantic. So that's a little bit of a pain. So typically once you start going down the Spright line, you're playing Spright that turn. Now, that would make you think that, okay, well, the synergy between the deck then can't be that great because obviously once you start playing one, it locks you out of the other. Well, that's where the bridge comes in. And what is the bridge? The bridge is Assault Synchron. So we're playing 6 copies of Assault Synchron, 3 copies of the card, and 3 copies of tuning with searches for it. So you're going to have this a decent amount of the time, plus you can even grab it off the likes of your Chaos Ruler. So Assault Synchron acts as the glue that holds the two together, and how does it do that? Well, it's a level 2 for a start that can special summon itself to the field free of charge, right? So Spright are loving it. You can instantly start spamming your Sprights out the board from hand if you happen to have this card in your hand as well, because the Sprights will all special summon themselves to the field if you control a level 2 monster. So Assault Synchron meeting that level 2 threshold is amazing. What's even better is the fact that it's a tuner, which means you can use this and either any of your Sprights, or well, ideally one of your Sprights or your Calico Clawcrow, or well, not your Shinobi Necro, obviously it's a tuner, but basically Assault Synchron plus any of your level 2s, of which you play a myriad, even Max C in a pinch, right? You can use these to synchro summon into the Cupid Pitch. Now, Cupid Pitch is amazing because Cupid Pitch, when used as synchro material, when summoned, will modulate its level according to the level of the tuner that was used for its summon. So because the tuner is level 2, it will either increase or decrease its level by 2. Now that's very, very important because you're going to be using it as a tuner for your summon of the Chaos Ruler. That depends entirely upon what extender you have available to you. If you have a level 2 extender available to you, then you change this card to a level 6. 6 plus 2 gives you your Chaos Ruler. If you have a level 6 extender in the form of a Bestial monster, you would then change its level to 2, so 2 plus 6 gives you 8. There's your routes in the Chaos Ruler. And then what's going to happen when you summon the Chaos Ruler is not only will you get the Chaos Ruler's effect to check the top cards of your deck, this card is nuts, this card's broken, You also get to use Cupid Pitch, which will search your deck for any monster that has exactly 600 defense. What has 600 defense? Xiamen. P.U.N.K Xiamen. And Xiamen's going to be the core central card of the P.U.N.K side of the deck. So basically, your Assault Synchron bridges your sprites directly into your P.U.N.K. And because you can do this play without normal summoning, you can special the Assault Synchron, you can special out any of your sprites to work alongside it. Because you don't need to use your normal summon, you can normally just normal summon Xiamen, which is amazing. And then Xiamen, of course, is going to do the rest of the P.U.N.K plays. It's going to summon out the Axel Stardust. Bang, 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 you start comboing like crazy. You saw the gameplay, right? If you want to watch sort of more of the combo, more of the plays and the potential, watch the gameplay in this video. Even just watch some basic P.U.N.K videos that I post. A lot of it's going to be fairly similar past that point, except you're going to be setting up some pretty amazing defensive plays in the form of Spright Elf, as well as Masquerena, things like this. So yeah, absolutely, this deck is absolutely amazing. That synergy alone is enough to put these together, and it feels amazing. The only card that I'm not too big on, if I'm going to be honest with you, is the whole Shinobi Necro Sprint package. It comes up, I get it, it is neat to have, but I feel like I see this card in my hand too often to justify the package. Now, using the likes of Salamangreat Almirage, you can remove it as a bricking problem as long as you have a Bestial in hand, but we're only playing 3 Bestials. So, again, it's not the most consistent thing in the world. I would really rather... I would really sort of like to drop this card, if I'm being honest with you. I really would like to drop this. I would likely then drop Sprint as well as Almirage, just to free up some room in the extra deck, because the extra deck is tight as hell. It is hard to breathe up in this bitch. So that is something you can do, even before we get into the deck profile. I just wanted to voice all of that before we start going over the cards, just so we're all on the same page, you know why we're playing what we're playing. So now let's cover off the individual cards that allow us to make those plays. We're going to start with hand traps, of course. We're going to go for the Triple Maxi. Triple Maxi is right here. Of course, pretty standard. You have to play it. It being a level 2 is also pretty damn useful, because you can use it as an emergency starter for your Spright plays, as an extender. So, you know, it's kind of more useful than most. We got the Triple Ash Blossom, because fuck Maxi. We've got Cult by the Grave, because fuck Maxi. We got Crossout Designator, because of Maxi. That's it. We were also playing Duel at one point, but we took that out in favor of Infinite Impermanence, the 2 copies here, because it was more generically applicable. So we have room for 11 hand traps in this deck. 11 is pretty decent, absolutely. I think 11 is, by all means, not a small number of hand traps. It's not quite as many as I'm used to playing in P.U.N.K decks, but it is definitely more than enough, especially when you consider the Bestial cards are also like pseudo-interruptions, depending upon your opponent. So yeah, again, 11 hand traps and 3 Bestials is pretty damn solid in terms of a flex zone count, so you can do whatever you want with those numbers. I mean, honestly, low-key in love with Instant Contact. I don't know if there's like a good Instant Contact target for this deck. The only thing I'm thinking of is if there's like a level 2 hero we could summon, but I don't think there is. It'd be pretty funny if there was, though. But yeah, you really like to have quite a number of hand traps in here, so I think this is more than enough engine cards. Now, we're going to talk about the 2 packages individually. We'll talk about the Spright cards, first of all. So, of course, we have double Spright Blue, we have double Spright Jet, double Red, and a singular Carrot. So all of these cards have one thing in common. They can special summon themselves to the field if you control a level 2. Now, that is very important. I would honestly, low-key, almost want to bump up Carrot as well, just to make sure we have level 2s in our hand as often as possible. But yeah, these guys all special summon themselves when you control a level 2, like Assault Synchron, or any of your other level 2s that you're playing. Spright Blue on summon will search your deck for a Spright monster. Spright Jet will search your deck for a spell or trap. Red and Carrot can both tribute another level 2 monster that you control in order to negate a monster effect or a spell trap effect, respectively. So these 2 are interruptions, these 2 are searchers. You also have a Spright Starter, which will summon out a Spright from deck, but it will cost you life points equal to their attack points, but it does lock you into level, rank, and link 2s for the rest of the turn, so you really don't want to use Starter until you get more heavily into your combo and sort of later on in the turn. You've also got Spright Smashers. Spright Smashers will essentially banish a level 2. You'll banish a Spright card from your graveyard or hand or field as cost, then you'll banish a level 2 you control and any card your opponent controls. Non-targeting removal, non-targeting banishment. This card is definitely very, very important. I wouldn't play more than one of it because it can feel a little bit like a brick sometimes, but this card is amazing at 1 for sure. One of the biggest advantages to the Spright package, honestly, is being able to play Smashers, for sure. I'm going to lump Caligo Clawcrow into this as well. Caligo Clawcrow, I think this card being able to special summon itself to the field if you control a dark monster is amazing. It's also searchable off of Cupid Pitch. It's also addable off of Chaos Ruler. So it just adds a little bit more versatility to the deck. Do I think you need 2 copies of it? Probably not. I think 1 copy is fine. But the card is definitely pretty solid, especially in situations where you've already gotten access to your Xiamen. If you've already got Xiamen, well then why would you search for a second one? Search for something more useful, and the Caligo Clawcrow fills that role perfectly. If you've got any other really good search targets for the Cupid Pitch, by the way, that you think we could put in this slot, you know, short of things like Nemesis Corridor, I know you can put Corridor in here and it would probably be pretty good. But anything like outside of the standard stuff, if you've got any spicy suggestions, leave them below. I'll have a look at it. We've got the Shinobi Necro. Shinobi Necro, this is part of the Spright package in that you're going to be using this card primarily with your Spright Sprint. And the way this card works is it's going to send a level 2 from your deck to the graveyard. That's going to be your Shinobi Necro. Why is that? Well, when this card is banished from the graveyard, you get to special summon it to the field from the banish pile, but I believe it gets shuffled into the deck. No, it banishes again when it leaves the field. So the Shinobi Necro is an excellent level 2 extender, especially considering you have the Chaos Ruler, which will be able to banish the Shinobi Necro as well as a light monster to summon itself from the graveyard. Being a level 2 tuner is going to enable you to go straight into a level 10 synchro monster like your Baron de Fleur or your Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Shen Ying. So it's definitely a really solid card. It can feel a little bit rough in hand, and the fact that sometimes we can just raw open it means that it sort of necessitates the playing of Salamangreat Almirage, which eats up another extra deck slot, which I'm not super sold on. It definitely is pretty good. It definitely has a lot of neat interaction, but it's not a card you need to play, and it's a card that I'm constantly considering cutting. But then in the next game, it'll work out. It'll do like amazing things, right? So it's one of those like game for game cards where one game you feel great about it, the next game you feel shit about it, and then so on and so forth, right? Just one of those cards. You know, it just happens. And that should pretty much wrap it up for the Spright package. Then we're going to talk about the P.U.N.K cards. So we got P.U.N.K Xiamen, 3 Xiamen, 1 Deer Note, 1 Foxy Toon, and 2 copies of E-Telly. So very, very minimalist P.U.N.K package. We're not playing a lot of P.U.N.Ks. The reason being we don't need to play a lot of P.U.N.Ks. Usually you would play a bunch of extra cards like the Foxy Toon of 3 or the Ogre Dance, or you would play Sharkusai in order to summon out the card and blah blah blah. That's just to make your Xiamen and Deer Note significantly more consistent. You don't need that with this deck because you're going to be using your Cupid Pitch to grab your Xiamen directly from the deck, which means that that's not a consistency problem anymore. So why would I play more copies of a card that's only going to brick my hand? Doesn't make any sense. So Xiamen is definitely amazing. You don't care about opening up the Deer Note in this deck because you're just going to use Xiamen to grab Foxy Toon and then just summon Deer Note from hand using it. So opening up Deer Note is not a problem. So playing it at 1 is totally fine. E-Telly just summons this. By the way, for anyone who has been sleeping under a rock and has never been on the channel before, Xiamen basically just pays 600 life points to search your deck for a P.U.N.K monster. Right? Deer Note can... Its main effect is that it's when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, it will resurrect any P.U.N.K monster from your graveyard. It can also special summon itself from the hand by revealing another P.U.N.K in hand, so reveal it and another P.U.N.K, and you basically send one to the grave, summon the other. So you'll usually use that to summon Deer Note. And Foxy Toon will basically just discard itself and another card to special summon a non-level 8 P.U.N.K directly from the deck. So ideally what you'll normally do is, of course, you'll go through your whole Cupid Pitch combo, you'll grab Xiamen, normal Xiamen, use it to search out your Foxy Toon, use Foxy Toon's effect to summon out Deer Note directly from deck, and then you start going into your level 8 synchros, and Deer Note starts reviving cards, and it gets pretty nuts. Basically, that's the primary crux of the P.U.N.K combo, is you want to have Xiamen and Deer Note on the board to do some level 8 shenanigans, to summon out a bunch of extenders, to go into some crazy, crazy plays. E-Telly is just 2 extra copies of Xiamen, just special summons it straight from deck. And that's normally, honestly, because we have this, And because we're playing so many copies of Xiamen, and it's not exactly rare that you're going to just open up into it, that's why maybe the second Claw Crow is actually kind of nice. But I would be super tempted to cut the Necro in favor of Nemesis Corridor, and to play Colossus in my extra deck. For this exact reason, because we have so many ways of getting into this, if I were to play the deck like this, not only would it free up an extra deck slot, it also gives us potentially a Colossus on some pretty good imports. So that's something to consider. And finally, we have, well, not finally, we have the tuning engine. Of course, we've already talked about Assault Synchron in decent amount of depth here. It's two main effects. Number one, during the main phase, you can special summon it straight from the hand by paying 700 life points. But it locks you in the synchro only if you summon it through those means. So as long as it's on the field, you're synchro locked. But that's fine, because that's normally what we're going to do. And it being a level 2 as well is absolutely amazing, enables all of your sprites. It also has another effect where if this card's in the graveyard and one of your dragon synchro monsters is either tributed or is banished from the field, you get to banish this card from the graveyard to resurrect that dragon monster. Now that is going to be useful specifically with Chaos Ruler, because this card, as we all know, I'm going to briefly talk about it later on as well, but this card can resurrect itself from the graveyard by banishing a light and a dark from the grave, but when it next leaves the field, it gets banished. Well, that's going to trigger Assault Synchron's effect to banish itself to resummon your Chaos Ruler again, meaning you're going to summon this card 3 times in one turn. You're going to synchro summon it, you're going to use its effect to revive it, and then you're going to use Assault Synchron's effect to revive it once again, and it's going to put it back in your graveyard to bring back next turn. So that is definitely an amazing interaction, and one that I would definitely recommend toying around with. And then we've just got 3 copies of tuning, because it's a non-once per turn search spell with 0 cost, and it even allows you to mill a card on activation. Tuning has to be one of the best generic search cards, or the best, archetype specific search cards in the entire game. It's right up there with like Sky Striker Engage, in my opinion. I think this and Engage, I think Engage is better, of course, but this is like really good. Then we've got the Bestials. We're playing 3 Bestials. We're playing Magnomit, we're playing Drissworm, we're playing Baldrake. You can play more if you want. I don't think you would go far wrong by playing more. If you wanted to maybe cut the Corridor and maybe cut a Clawcrow, you could play a Saronir and maybe a second Baldrake. Something like that. You could definitely play more Bestials. 3 is fine though. We didn't have a ton of issues with 3. We saw them often enough. We saw them when we needed them. We didn't brick on them. So, you know what? I'm happy enough with 3 Bestials. For anyone who doesn't know, Bestials are basically dragons that can special summon themselves to the field as a quick effect by banishing a light or dark monster from either player's graveyard, so long as your opponent controls a monster. If they don't control a monster, then it's not a quick effect. So it's extremely useful in the likes of a Tearlament matchup, which of course is the best deck in the game at the minute and likely will be for a while, so be prepared for Tearlaments. That's the only real reason I would consider playing more, is not only are they useful extenders, they're also super useful against Tearlaments. And that pretty much covers the main deck. I guess I'll talk briefly about Nemesis Corridor, even though we didn't play it. I would, in hindsight, play this card, I think. Just because I don't really like the Shinobi Necro, and this does sort of fill that spot a little bit better. Basically, this card can return one of your banished monsters back to your deck to special summon itself, and because it activates its effect in hand, you can then immediately tribute it to special summon your Thunder Dragon Colossus directly from the extra deck. It has 600 defense, which makes it searchable off of Cupid Pitch, which is the only reason we would even consider playing it, because it means if we already have access to Xiamen or our Xiamen line, then we can just search for this as a secondary target. Of course, Caligo Clawcrow is also a really good secondary target, but it's really good in the context of you being able to continue your Spright plays. If you don't have any more Spright plays to make, then the Caligo Clawcrow can sometimes feel a little bit weak as a sort of follow-up card. But either way, both are phenomenal targets. I would maybe, because of this, cut Clawcrow down to 1, just because you've got that additional target as well. And you just want to maximize on space for hand traps. So take that with a pinch of salt, play it however you want. I'm going to put it back to how the deck originally was, just so that we're not confusing things. I did just briefly want to mention that you could potentially make those changes in order to change the direction in which the deck will play. Okay, so talking about the extra deck, we're not saving this, definitely not. We need to get our hand traps back in. Talking about the extra deck, we have Synchros first of all. So our 2 level 4s, we've got Herald of the Arclight and Cupid Pitch, both very important cards. We've talked about this card to death. So we have modulate its level, search as a 600 defense monster, blah blah blah. We've talked about this constantly. We've got Herald of the Arclight. Herald of the Arclight is essentially an on-field floodgate, as well as having an Omni Negate built into its effect. So long as it's in the field, any monster that would be sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard is banished instead. That is amazing against the like of Tearlament, so definitely a very, very powerful card to have if you know the matchup. It's also a very good level 4 Synchro monster you can go into whenever you need to just get rid of an Assault Synchron that has you Synchro locked on your board. So Herald of the Arclight is an amazing card for sure. Keep a Pitch, of course. Then we've got our 2 level 8s. We've got Chaos Ruler, and we've got the XL Synchro Stardust Dragon. Your Chaos Ruler, again, we talked about Chaos Ruler to death. We all know what it does. Checks the top 5 cards of your deck for light or dark, adds one of them to your hand, pitches the rest. It can revive itself off of its own effect. This card is absolutely nuts. We're playing the XL Synchro Stardust Dragon, which you will summon basically every game. A lot of decks I put this card into as a backup option. In this particular deck, this is actually a primary combo piece. Because on summon, it basically targets a level 2 or lower tuner in your grave and brings it back. That's going to be your Assault Synchron. So not only does it set up another level 2 on your board after you do your whole Chaos Ruler play for you to potentially extend into more Sprites, it also sets up a tuner on board for you to go into Spright Elf. Elf then brings the Assault Synchron back again and allows you not only Spright Elf on the board, which will give you targeting protection, but also the gas needed for an additional summon for a level 10 Synchro, whatever it is. Normally then that's going to trigger off your Assault Synchron Engrave to bring back your Chaos Ruler to set up a rank 8 Exceed. So under normal sort of circumstances, you're going to be having a pretty consistent Spright, Harbinger, and Baron de Fleur at sort of a bare minimum, thanks to the XL Synchro Stardust Dragon. So this card is definitely really good. It is a bunch of other text, ignore it. Its only real consequential effect is that on summon it brings back your Assault Synchron. That's it, ignore everything else. We've got our 2 level 10s, our boss monsters, as you will. We're going to go for Baron de Fleur and Cheng Ying. Again, 2 the most generic level 10 synchro monsters in the game. Very, very powerful cards. This has a once while phase up Omni Negate, as well as a once per turn Ignition pop a card. Pretty great. And Cheng Ying can protect itself from effect destruction by banishing a card from the graveyard. Should a card be banished, you can banish a card on your opponent's field and in their graveyard, so a massive amount of removal. A little bit hard to proc on demand, but it is definitely still amazing. Plus it gets absolutely huge because for every banished card, it boosts itself by 100 attack and defense and reduces all of your opponents by 100 attack and defense, which can help you get over sort of walls and things like that. So Cheng Ying, absolutely busted for sure. We've got Psychic and Punisher, which we don't use as much in this version of the deck. You can summon it out very consistently. And it's a really good tool for going second, especially. So Psychic and Punisher, of course, being one of the main bosses of the deck. I'm not a fan of like a turn 1 Punisher. I know a lot of people summon Punisher out as part of their turn 1 end board. I really don't like that. I think if you're telegraphing to your opponent that they need to play around a Punisher, then they're going to do so. Yes, they may dedicate more resources to doing so, but they're going to be able to plan for it. Whereas if you just surprise them with a Psychic and Punisher in turn 2 or turn 3, they're not going to be as well equipped to handle it. So that, again, that's just my perspective, but the card is definitely really, really solid and a decently difficult wall for your opponent to get over if you do summon it for frame 1. And why is that? Well, of course, not only is it huge at 3500 attack base, it's also unaffected by your opponent's activated card effects so long as you have less life points than your opponent, which is amazing. And you do pay a lot of life points in this deck for your Assault Synchron, your Zeoman, and even this card's own effect, so you normally will, at least for the beginning of the duel, have less life points than your opponent. You can also once per turn pay 1000 life points, target a monster you control and any card your opponent controls, banish them both. Really good spot removal as well, helping lower your life points even more, which plays into its third effect beautifully, because at the beginning of any battle phase you can opt to have this monster permanently gain attack points equal to the difference between your life points and your opponent's life points. So it gets even bigger. This card gets absolutely huge. We've seen videos on this channel where we're seeing 11,000, 14,000 attack on the Psychic and Punisher, and it's just mollywopping these idiots. This card is nuts. I absolutely love it. We got 2 Exceed monsters. We've got Gigantic Spright, first of all. It can special summon any level 2 monster directly from the deck, but it does lock you into level 2s for the rest of that turn. Pretty solid card overall. Really good extender in certain circumstances. helps you set up the likes of a Shinobi Necro in a pinch if you really need to set up for next turn, or even just setting up some basic negates, or even some searches if you really just want to extend into like an elf and set up some decent things for next turn. So Gigantic is definitely solid. You're not going to be using it every game, but it's definitely a really nice tool to have. We got Harbinger, one of our generic boss monsters. You'll summon this off of any 2 level 8s. Once per turn you get to negate a spell card, and you steal that spell card as Exceed material. It can detach an Exceed material from itself to redirect one of your opponent's attacks to this card. So it feels like that second effect makes it feel like a baby Avramax, where it's able to protect some of your lower stat monsters, like a Herald of Arclight, for example, which is a beautiful floodgate, but it's only got 1000 defense. Not too difficult for a Rhino Heart to swing over, whereas the Hope Harbinger makes it a lot more difficult for the likes of Tier Limits to out this card. And that's where this card is most useful in the Tier Limit matchup. So Hope Harbinger, definitely really nice. And of course, the Yoink in the spell card is great. It feels amazing. Helps stop things like the Tier Limit Scream from from searching cards. If you were to just negate it or pop it through regular means, it would get to search for some stuff. This card just steals it. It is now mine. Repossessed. Out of here. So that does feel really nice. Absolutely. You could even argue, to be honest, and again, this is something that I wanted to talk about. Our next 2 cards I'm going to talk about are Salamangreat Almirage and Spright Sprint, which I've already mentioned. They're here solely for the Shinobi Necro, because on summon, Sprint will send a level 2 from your deck to the graveyard. It also has a second effect where if another monster special summoned to the field while it's here, you can detach material from an Exceed monster to return that monster back to hand, which is kind of nice, especially in combination with your Hope Harbinger, because you're not often going to be using its attack redirection, because it's fucking huge, right? They're not going to be stupid. Well, sometimes they are stupid enough to swing, which is always hilarious. I love it when they don't read this card. But normally people are going to read it. They're going to know not to attack while it's here. So Sprint being able to make use of its Exceed materials is kind of useful. Sometimes it like very rarely comes up, but it is definitely a little bit of synergy that you should bear in mind. It is a play. And the thing about this deck is that it thrives on versatility. So the more different plays you have, the more you can adapt to your opponent. So you need to read, you need to pay attention to what your options are, and knowledge is power. But these 2 cards in particular, again, you could remove these 100% if you didn't want to play Shinobi Necro. I don't feel like the Sprint's value is so great that beyond the extended that is the Shinobi Necro, that it really deserves a spot in the deck. And that opens up the doors to a plethora of other monsters. We've already covered one, which could be the Colossus. Another, if you're looking for more generic rank 8s, could be the likes of the Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord, which provides you a generic monster negate instead of a generic spell negate, or in addition to a generic spell negate. You could also look into the likes of a Galaxy Eyes Destruction Engine. You could pop in a Cypher and Full Armor to summon over one of your other cards. It's just an option. There's a lot of things you can do with the extra deck and that little sort of engine in those spaces if you decide not to play the Necro. I'm just throwing ideas at you, right? You tell me. We got Masquerena, generic Link monster. Again, Link summon during your opponent's turn. This card's very important because, again, you will be 2-locked sometimes. So being able to set up the ability to Link summon during your opponent's turn is crucial in any Spright deck, because you really want to summon out the likes of our Mech Knight Crusadia Avramax, which is one of our big boss monsters. This card, so long as it's summoned using Masquerena's material, is untargetable, indestructible, and if it banishes if it battles an opponent's monster, it gains attack points equal to their attack points, which makes it virtually almost like an unstoppable wall. And so long as it's face up, your opponent cannot target any monster other than this for an attack. So there's a lot of decks that just fold to Avramax. I'm gonna be real. Most sort of decks have a way of getting rid of it, but they need to overextend like crazy. And considering the power of the board you have behind this guy, it's a done deal, right? This guy is absolutely nuts. And Spright Elf makes it even easier to summon. Spright Elf not only protects anything it points to from targeting effects, it can also, once per main phase, revive back any level 2 from your graveyard, which is amazing for extension, being able to bring back Assault Synchrons, bring back Jets and Blues and Carrots and Reds in order to get searching, get negating. This card's amazing. Plus, of course, it is as a Link 2, the perfect material alongside your Masquerena to go into your Avramax. And finally, we have the White Lady Jumpscare, because sometimes there's a Borderland Dragon on the board, sometimes there's a Psychic Punisher on the board, and sometimes you just need a Kaiju. and that's why she's here. So White Lady Jumpscare, absolutely, you can extend into this card like it's nobody's business. So I would say one copy of it is definitely recommended. And that is pretty much us. So like I said, I've covered off a bunch of the different alterations in the deck, a ton of the synergy, quite a long deck profile, but I definitely feel like this deck deserves it. Again, full credit to Hexlex for coming up with the list. I don't want to take any credit for his creation. I just wanted to expand upon it, get it out to an audience. Of course, his audience is way bigger than mine. Really cool guy. I would really like to play with him on the channel. But yeah, there you go. Absolute blast. Anyone wants to play it, pick it up. If you want more sort of tips, tricks, gameplay, anything like that, we're going to be playing this on the channel more often, especially on stream and things like that. And you can, of course, pop over to Hexlex himself, who was the creator of the deck, and he'll be able to tell you. A link to the original videos will be in the description. So if you got this far, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you haven't, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.